Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe, and welcome to part 2 of the analysis on Pam Bondi's hearing that she recently did. If you haven't seen part 1, I suggest going and watching that. Also, I am still sick. It's just been holding on for the entire week, so if you hear that or feel some weird energy, that's where it's still coming from, so, you know, maybe that'll get better, maybe it won't. Regardless, let's go ahead and roll that intro. Last week's video on Bondi covered a couple of the highlights that people have been talking about on the internet, and this week's video will cover a few more. Again, go and watch that first video first if you haven't done that already. It will just add so much more clarity. There's a bit of a background and talking about her baseline, things like that in that video. Also, before we go into the actual content, as a reminder, as I did in the last video, I have a second channel where I do a lot more creative things over there.
So remind the flow. Said I'll die for you, baby.
I will be uploading some of the behind the scenes of what I do here at Observe as well over on that other channel if you would like to see some of those sorts of things coming up there. So go and check that out if you want to. Links in the description. That's all of the different things that I have to say and promote and stuff. Let's go ahead and just start right back into this.
So I'd like to ask a straightforward question that really is either a yes or no answer. Do these emails constitute credible evidence, not proof, but credible evidence warning further investigation into whether Steve Tisch was involved in Epstein's criminal conduct?
Okay, pausing before Bondi responds. Because this has been presented in a very clear way. This is a yes or no. Is this credible? Woo! Is this credible evidence or is it not? Yes or no? Let's see. Put your bets in now if Bondi will respond with a yes or no, or if there will be some attempt to circumvent that question because it's implicative. Let's find out.
Do you think yes or no?
I'm not going to play a yes-no game with you, but I will answer the question to the best of my ability. As I said, we will look and investigate any case involving any victim. I'm not familiar, there were 3 million pages, of course, with that email, but of course, we will look into anything. The documents have been released, 3 million, the redacted versions, we left them open for all of you to come view. Have you? I believe you view them. If not, will you have some copies?
I'd like to.
Could I finish, please? I'm not being rude, please.
I only have 5 minutes.
No, yeah, and I only have 30 seconds based on your filibustering.
Well, you didn't give a yes or no answer, so let me just go further.
All right, so obviously, I mean, at least Bondi is upfront about it. She says that she's not going to answer with a yes or no question, which there's some legal jargon implications behind that. Getting trapped into those yes or no's can be problematic, especially if you're on a side of a defense maybe there's been some problematic behavior with the party that you're involved with. It's very problematic to try to give yes or no answers because it can lead to problems in the future. So Bondi's not giving a yes or no answer, and then she continues to go through and say an answer to the question that wasn't asked. The question is this, good enough to continue pursuing, more or less? And she's saying if there is any victim stuff on there, then we'll investigate it, just any of them. And then she starts trying to play some interesting blame shifting games after that. One, this is still the same hearing, in case you didn't watch the last video. This is the same hearing in which Bondi refused to acknowledge, turn around, or apologize to the present Epstein victims that were in the room at the time. And so for her to now turn around and say that they'll look into any and every single instance of victimhood. Now she's talking about the release of the documents, which some of the pages are almost completely redacted, making them next to useless. Ironically, a lot of the pages that were fully redacted were redacted in not super intelligent or efficient ways, and so they were unredacted in areas. But the more problematic thing is that the areas that have had the most issues with not being redacted is the victims. There have been multiple instances of victims' identification, important information being out there. And those haven't been redacted, but all of the ones who are possible perpetrators have been redacted. So then she's starting to say the numbers game, which is there are 3 million whatever documents, and then she plays to but this is also your responsibility. So did you read that? How about anybody else? Stop paying attention to me. Please, did anybody else do some reading on this? And frankly speaking, everybody's supposed to be paying attention to her right now. She shouldn't be trying to shill off her burden of a responsibility at this point to anybody else. But that has been her MO through the rest of the hearing as well. So starting obviously into this second half here, we're seeing the exact same patterns that we saw in the prior video come up here. We're also seeing some more of this forced in impassioned emotional outbursts in certain areas where she greatly spikes on both her pitch and tone. Her pitch is much higher and her tone is much more forceful and strained, and she slaps her hands down on the table. But it's lightly desynchronized and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the tone of the sentence that she was just delivering. So it kind of feels like she's trying to suddenly inspire this outburst of impassioned energy, but it feels forced and fake because of its desynchronization. So these are some of the things that we're seeing already with just this first little bit here. Let's continue.
Bring credit to your department. And Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman, did you? None. And nor did
Mr.
she
Chairman,
post
regular
anything.
order, please.
She
Regular order.
posted nothing on her X account, on
Gentlelady.
her Twitter account during the Biden years.
Gentlelady.
And yet now,
there
all
was
of
no
a sudden,
question
she's
asked.
going after
Committee will be in
Point of
order.
order. There was no
Committee will
question
be in
asked of
order.
the Attorney General. She doesn't just get to speak.
Committee will be in order.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Alrighty, here we have again another instance of blame shifting. Verbally, she's also now taking and rephrasing the question. She's taking that question and being like, okay, you're asking me this question, which I won't answer. I'm not going to answer any of your questions, but I'm going to take it and then I'm going to pose you with a different question that really doesn't apply to the instance that we're talking about right now. Which she does this repeatedly, taking and reframing to a broader question, tries to tie it into like a morality or loyalty aspect of things, and then she tries to manipulate it around to where instead of the question that she had being asked being addressed, she's now trying to poke holes into anything else, and it's just defensiveness and manipulation. So she goes through defensiveness and manipulation regularly. I like that she slings the insults of like, and I'm not gonna cave to this circus stuff. And realistically speaking, she's the most, how best to say this? She's the best example of a clown in the room, I believe. But then afterwards, after she does this manipulation, after she does her fake outburst and slings some insults and whatnot, then she again settles back. She cocks her head, which I mentioned this in the last time. The cocking of the head, there's a myriad of reasons to that, and it depends on the context for which one we're going with. But it always conveys the comfort of being vulnerable in an area, aka you're not feeling at risk with somebody. The person who doesn't feel threatened by things, or wants to at least show that they don't feel threatened by things, will start showing their neck. Your neck's important, it's got vulnerable things in it. If you're feeling comfortable and confident, you can show your neck and soft underbelly, so to speak. If you're feeling defensive, you'll see the turtling and the defensive gesturing start to come out there. So she does that little thing. She also has a lightly contemptuous pursed lips smile, which just shows to an overt degree that she feels that she has moral and intellectual superiority over the people that are asking these questions. And I don't know if it's extrapolating or not, but it seems as though she has that opinion about everybody that's in the room with her as well. I think she feels like she's really acing this hearing and doing a fantastic job at answering these questions, and she hasn't answered any questions, and the only circus act in the room is her right now. But we do have more footage to go through.
Committee will be in order.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady can state her point of order.
When a witness attacks,
Not a valid point of order. You got to state.
She hasn't completed her point of order yet.
Gotta
Please let her
cite.
speak, Mr. Chairman. Let's have some regular order here.
Regular order is you got to state the rule. And she
I am
didn't do it.
trying to make a point of order that the witness,
And what rule are you referring to?
without responding to a question, has attacked me personally. I think it's pathetic that she can't answer the questions and
First
instead
time
is
that
attacking
is not even
members
close to a
of the
point of
committee.
order. The gentleman from
So you see there at the end, and it wasn't even at the end. She had used it regularly throughout her questioning and things like that. The dominating pointing finger, it always irks me. It doesn't matter who does it, when it's done. There are certain less problematic times that a pointer finger can be used, but in areas especially of conflict, it immediately is irksome to me, the person that thinks that they need to bring out the pointer finger first, because it usually indicates that that person feels like they are in the dominant role in this situation. It never comes out when somebody's trying to be submissive or open, something along those lines. So that comes out from the person asking the questions there, but I also I can kind of get where she's coming from on that. Again, Bondi completely circled around the question that was presented and then started throwing insults and things like that. So I get it. It's a tense situation. I just don't like the pointer finger. Anyway, we're about to get on to this next question.
So they're encouraging local law enforcement to leave local law enforcement and go to work for ICE. We need people working in the front lines and local law enforcement to protect our citizens from the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst are not the immigrants. The worst of the worst, records show, are native-born Americans, and they are committing crimes that hurt our citizens and our cities, and you're working against it, and thank you for that. But by trying to get our local law enforcement, where we have an undercount of officers in Memphis, to leave Memphis and go to work for ICE to deport people is a wrong priority. Why are we trying to get people, policemen who are working on the front lines, to leave the front lines, take the $50,000 and go to work for ICE and instead of working to fight the worst of the worst?
Now, decent question. Why are we reallocating resources to other places that is not as necessary? Decent question. I've also seen on that instigation to join ICE side of things that some of the people, and I have not been able to fully verify this, it's been murky as a lot of stuff around this is, but I've also seen that some of those people that have been promised these sorts of bonuses and things like that have not been receiving said bonuses, that it's almost like a catfish that they're dealing with there. They go in expecting a certain thing, and then the tables are flipped on them, and it's not actually turning out that way. Not positive on that. You in the comments probably know a little bit more about that than I do, but it's a decent question again. Why are we reallocating resources that we need in other areas to go to this other area? Let's, yeah.
Congressman, I have not yet seen that commercial, that ad. I would argue that we need strong people in both local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and all of our federal agencies working together. I've seen some of the worst violent criminals who were in this country illegally. We both know that. And in Memphis, working hand in hand, I want to stick with Memphis and your mayor and what you discussed, because there have been nearly 6,000 arrests as of February 8th, and I think you agree with this, in your district, and almost 600 gang members. What we found in Memphis, a lot of the gangs are local gangs, but 600 gang members were taken off the streets.
My time, because I've only got 40 seconds. I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah.
I thank you for that.
And 148 missing children were recovered by all of us working together, and nearly 1,000 illegal guns were seized as a result of us working together.
Does that count as answering the question? I'm not really sure, because, I mean, why did you reallocate these resources? Why did you move people to other places? Why are you encouraging other people to move to other places when they're needed where they are? And her response is, I didn't see that, but we need people everywhere. Yes, sure. And then she tries to continue to unpack it and being like, well, we've had successful stuff in Memphis. Let's focus on Memphis. Things have been going well with the arrests in Memphis, which is great, cool. That means that there are the needed resources in the area. If things are going well in the area, that's because they are receiving good resources. They have the funding to do so, the personnel, things like that. Which I guess kind of, in my opinion, circles back around to the gentleman's question of like, but then why are you asking to remove those resources? I don't know. To me, it feels difficult to say. Also, non-verbally speaking, we see a lot of this gesture, which is the stop stop, calm down gesture, palm lightly down again. That's more dominating. And we're seeing the pointer finger come out again as the like, I'm making points, you don't talk. I don't know. That one, I feel out of all of the answers that I have at least seen and been able to include here in the past couple videos, that one feels the almost closest to addressing the question while still, again, not actually addressing it at all. Here we are continuing on our master class of how not to answer any questions presented to you. So, I mean, all right. There we go. There's that answer.
Identities of the Epstein victim survivors from the Epstein files prior to their release. 500, is that correct?
If I could have finished my answer,
Well,
there were more
you
than
just- yeah, I'm
500
just-
attorneys and reviewers who
Okay.
assisted
All right, okay.
with the. They
That
asked a question and they don't want an answer.
That answers my question,
Congressman,
ma'am,
let
and
me
I'm going to
continue.
move on.
More than.
I'm going to move on.
From
General
multiple
Bondi, would
districts.
you
You would be in
agree?
order.
This
Time
is
belongs,
ridiculous.
the time belongs to the gentleman from Georgia.
General Bondi, would you agree that your 8 years of service as the state of
I don't understand where she was getting frustrated with that. She answered his question. And then he's like, okay, that answers my question. I'm moving on to the next one. And she's getting upset that he's moving on to the next one. Maybe there was something that I missed there. Maybe it was more implicative than I was expecting. To me, it just seems like that was an easy shift. Answered question, good, we're moving on to the next one. And she got upset at that. And maybe at this point, since this is a decent part through the hearing, she's just categorized by her defensiveness. That immediate leap to aggression and frustration and anger. This context would make sense with that defensiveness. So, not certain on that, but we're going to hear another question here and just, yeah.
Florida's Attorney General, the third largest state in the nation, served as an excellent preparation for your current role as Attorney General for the United States of America?
Not only that, I was a career prosecutor for 18 years.
And for
18 years.
And for 18
prior
years,
to being
for 18
He
years,
asked a
you
question and doesn't
prosecuted.
want an answer. This is theatrics.
Well, no, for 18 years, you
on.
prosecuted serious felony cases, including drug cases, correct?
Oh, I prosecuted homicides, I prosecuted capital cases, I prosecuted domestic violence cases, I prosecuted multiple cases, and that's why I feel for all of these victims. And did you ask Merrick Garland this when you were sitting before him, sir?
You also prosecuted sexual assault cases and child sex trafficking cases, correct?
I answered that question earlier.
Okay.
I prosecuted
All right.
multiple
Well,
cases
so
when I
bottom
was
line-
a prosecutor.
bottom
If I
line,
can
you're an
answer the question,
experienced and seasoned-
for 18
you're an
years.
Mr. Chairman, will you remind her of the rules? The time belongs to the member of the committee.
You
I think
are
I've
a
said that a few
seasoned
times.
and experienced prosecutor, correct?
I think we've established that.
Yes or no?
Does he want an answer or not?
he wants to
When
say-
I
I want a
answer,
yes
I
or
get
no
cut off.
answer.
I think he wants to say
I want a
that.
yes or no
I
answer,
can-
but
yeah, I can
I'll
explain my
live with what you
experience. I'd
have
be
already
love to
said.
explain
Let
my
me ask you.
experience.
Let me ask you this question.
Clearly,
in
you
the
don't have any.
prosecution of sexual assault cases, you are acutely aware of how important it is to protect the identity of victims of sexual assault, correct?
I have addressed this multiple times. I think others were cutting me off when I was trying
Well,
to.
I just simply asked, are you aware of the fact that it's vitally important to protect the identity of sexual assault victims as you prosecute the people they accuse of assaulting them? Isn't that correct?
Excuse me. As we have said multiple times,
Protection of the
protection
identity
of all victims
of the victims
are
is so
protected.
very
Who are
important.
protected under? Do you want me to answer or do you want to interrupt?
Well, because you're not answering the question. You do a Jekyll and Hyde kind of routine around here, and I just want you to answer my questions.
What does Jekyll and Hyde mean? Can
Well,
you
it
explain
means
that?
you're nice to the
Explain that.
Republicans and you
Okay. The gentleman asking questions to Bondi's defense did override her a few times. In his defense, she always starts her answers by trying to rephrase questions and whatnot, and he does kind of call light to that at the very end with the you have a kind of a two-faced approach to things, which he's not the only one to have said that. There were many reports of Bondi behaving extremely differently towards the Republican side of things than the Democrat side of things, which is just, again, that's just politics. And that's why I try to avoid this as much as possible. Everybody is just a blowhard at everybody continuously. But throughout that one, I kind of like, I can at least understand some of Bondi's frustrations with him continually cutting in. It wasn't the best look for him to continue to do that. If we just look at that problematic, if we look at the context of how she's handled the rest of the hearing, I understand where his, I'm not here for your fluff. Like, I want your straightforward answer, please. Let's stop the fluff. Let's stop the redirect. Let's stop the manipulation. They're going back and forth, and then she flashes, again, a very fake, forced smile off to the side there. It doesn't reach the eyes. It's very tight. She's not feeling happy. It's not something that she's feeling giddy in any form of things. She's trying to play off a certain image here, but it's through a forced and fake smile. Now we're about to get to yet another really fun and exciting question. Maybe this time everybody will be able to answer fairly decently, but let's see.
Of the prior administration that saw dangerous drugs and criminal aliens flood our communities.
Congressman, President Trump has worked tirelessly, as you know, to close our border, which is what the Democrats had asked for in that video. President Trump closed our borders on day one. He is protecting Americans. He is protecting our kids from the influx of drugs that were flowing into this country from Mexico. The fentanyl precursors that were coming from China. These precursors were taken from China into Mexico. And in Mexico, they were mixed and freely taken right into our country, along with gang members, MS-13, TDA, freely coming into our cities around our country, thanks to Joe Biden's open border policies. That has stopped under Donald Trump. It will no longer happen under this administration, and he is doing everything to keep Americans safe. And let me continue. When he was elected overwhelmingly by the American people, the majority of the American people wanted Donald Trump. One of the main reasons was border security and keeping Americans safe. And that's exactly what he did. And that's why today the other side sits here, they yell, they cut me off, they want to yell, they want to ask a question and don't want answers because they want to distract from all the great things that this president and this administration working hand in hand, and that includes Secretary Noem, who has closed our borders, and Tom Homan, who has closed our borders to keep Americans safe. And they're trying to distract from that, and they're not going to do it because the American people are smarter than that, and they see through their theatrics.
And that's where that's going to wrap up. Again, there's so much more to that hearing than what I've covered in here, and there are other videos covering the hearing as well. So if you would like to go and find, I do heavily suggest you go and watch Spidey over at the Behavioral Arts. He does more on this hearing as well. So you might be able to hear even some more opinions around that. Now, in this, what I just find problematic, if we're just looking at the way that Bondi presents everything, is in the realm of the way that a narcissist presents problems. And then that's that every other person around is the problem, and that's the only way that the problem can exist. There's no ownership internally of any of those problems. So she's saying China's a problem, and Mexico's a problem, and everybody else is a problem, and what she's showing by inference there is that then America's not a problem, that we don't have any problematic people in America, which is utter horseshit. There's problematic people everywhere. But it's this presentation of things. She's trying to present things as if everybody else is fully like the black side of things, and this is the pure white side of things, and they've done all the bad stuff, and we over here, we're only just doing the good things, and that's manipulators lingo. It's black and whiting a situation that is not actually black and white, and it's almost exclusively always gray. Even at the end there where she's trying to respond to some of the questions, there is still a level, a pretty overt level of manipulation. The overwhelming everybody voted for Donald Trump is simply not the case. Anybody who lived through that knows all of the turbulence that went around that and the back and forths, and if it was all this overwhelming thing, there would never have been contention about it because it would have been the landslide that she presented. And so sure, her trying to say that, it's the classic situation of the Trump administration trying to rewrite history in order to better fit the narrative that they have concocted, not actual history itself, but what they want people to remember. And so I will probably continue to make videos on politics and the things around it, especially if I feel like the expertise that I have can be beneficial on any level to help people understand some context around things down to the behavioral level. But again, I try to avoid political stuff like the plague because of instances like this where so often both sides are problematic in their own rights. Everybody has their issues that they're working with, and there's not a single political party that I feel justly deserves the backing of all of the people. It seems as though every single one, if you dig deep enough, if you look hard enough or look far enough back or look behind enough closed doors, ends up being a little bit greasy and slimy in their own right, and it's just a matter of which ball game they're gonna play in that way. So I have difficulties with that, but I hope you did enjoy this little short series of videos that I did here. If there are more things around it, I might do more. If you have requests, certain specific ideas, you can leave them in the comments of this video. You can also go over to my community tab. I have activated that, so you can leave your questions there. I might be able to get around to answering to those. And then, yeah, again, if you want to go and check out the second channel to see things that are not necessarily body language related and not necessarily always filled with drama or true crime darkness or political shitstorm, things like that, go and check out that second channel. It would be very appreciated. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.